On today's show, I am joined once again by good friend of the podcast, Glen Willis of ATL 29 for part 2 of a deep dive chat about Vit Krejci, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2045 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday here in late August. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out. Subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends, etc. Follow us on Apple, on Spotify, also on YouTube. So if you're watching right now, please like this video as you're watching it. And again, spread the word for us. We very much appreciate you spreading the word about this podcast. And today, I will be joined once again by my friend Glen Willis of ATL and 29 for part 2 of a 2-part chat about Vit Krejci. So as a PSA, part 1 has already been published. If you missed that, I recommend strongly you begin with part 1 and listen to the whole thing in chronological order. Part 1 is available right now. This is going to be the second part of the conversation. And one more thing before we dive into the part 2 of this chat. EuroBasket begins on Wednesday. As you're probably listening to this right now, Vit could be playing right now. In fact, Vit Krejci in Czech Republic begin EuroBasket officially at 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday against Portugal. So if you listen to this podcast after that, the game's already happened. That's okay. I'm sure it's available to watch somewhere, and we'll break it down at some point on the podcast. And also, by the way, 2 more times, the Hawks have guys playing in the next 24 hours. If you listen to this podcast when it was actually released, Kristaps Porzingis and Latvia begin their EuroBasket run at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday against Turkey. And then Zachary Richer and France tip off in EuroBasket on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time against Belgium. So 3 Hawks players, 3 games in the first 24 to 30 hours of EuroBasket. Plenty of basketball to discuss in the near future. But as for Vit, that is getting underway. In fact, very, very early on Wednesday morning against Portugal. All right, that's all I have on this intro of this podcast. And again, part 1 available right now in the same feed. Part 2 with myself and Glen right now.
You sort of tee it up there by saying he has to get better. And I wanted to go there anyway. And that's where I was going to start with the defense. It's like, I don't think Vit is terrible defensively. I don't. And this is intentionally broad. We'll get into more nuance than this. I don't think he's terrible. And the numbers don't think that either. Some of the advanced metrics, he's below average in EPM. He's below average and that makes sense with my eyeballs. But also, it's not a situation where I look at him and he's like food. I don't think of him that way. I think he can be a decent enough guy defensively. He does have some weaknesses. I think his physical strength is one of them. You're right that in my mind, some of the processing stuff does not always pop defensively in the way it does offensively. And he's not unique to that. There's a lot of guys like that who are savant offensive players. It's why can't you be better defensively? What's wrong with you? Don't you see the game this way on the other end of the floor? Trey was kind of like this for a long. Trey's gotten better, but he's Trey's obviously a savant. And it's why can't you be a little bit better defensively? And he has gotten better to his credit. Yeah. But similarly, Trey's got even worse limitations physically. Vit does have physical limitations. And that leads into some positional stuff. He's played a lot of the 3 in his career. He's not a 3 defensively, physically. I don't think he can. He might have to be in certain lineups. And he does have the length. He's 6'8", but he's listed at 195. He might be bigger than that now. That was an early listing, but still, he's a very thin, slender guy. He has some strengths too defensively, but I feel like it's you're right in setting it up there. He has to take a step forward, and it could be a modest one, or else you get into the playoffs and it's hey, we probably can't play you today. And now there's another guy on the team that we'll talk about at some point later this summer. Luke Kennard's very similar. Luke Kennard is not a playoff level defender. And that's been one of his problems in the past. It's he's a really good regular season player. You get to the playoffs, and it's I don't know if you can play Luke Kennard tonight. Vit's not quite like that, but that could be a similar issue where the Hawks have these 2 guys who might be their 8th and 9th players, 8th and 10th players who have a similar, hey, can you guys defend? Particularly with Trey. It's I don't know, man. We'll see.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how that stacks up. But for me, when it comes to a guy like Vit, right, last year at the injuries, like I said, he got pushed into a defensive role that doesn't fit his skill set, right?
Agreed.
And so, to me, I think they have an opportunity with the roster construction that they're taking into this season to get his role to be more what you'd want for a guy who has his strengths and weaknesses. And hopefully that's something that helps him a lot. If, let's say, Porzingis is playing, a lot of minutes with the second unit, having that rim protection, but behind you helps. Being able to funnel the ball handlers towards him helps. Having Nickeil Alexander-Walker on the floor so that Vit's not guarding the point guard or the top wing creator on the other team and what have you. So for me, I think the roster construction is going to be completely different than last year, such that that you can say, oh, we're going to put Vit on with these guys so he's not getting constantly switched on. Can he navigate a screen, avoid a switch, not getting switched on to a Donovan Mitchell, not getting switched on to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, I'm kind of excited to see the way that they build a 9 or 10 man rotation in the more defensive support that should be on the floor basically for all 48 minutes that just was not there last year.
Yeah, it's kind of two-pronged where it's like he has to get better and he has to be put in better situations. Both can be true at the same time. There were too many times last season, and this is not his fault, where he was tasked to being the kind of number one defender on the perimeter, and he's not that. I mean, they have Dyson, obviously. They have Dyson and Nickeil, and that alone should mean, as long as those guys are healthy, that they never have to ask me to do that. But even like someone like Kobe, who's unproven, Kobe's a better defender than Vit. Like I think that's pretty clear. Yeah. So if it's a guard matchup, they have Kobe to throw at a guy. Keaton Wallace is on a two-way, but if it's a guard level, like a smaller guard, like you would throw Keaton on a guy before you want to throw. I mean, they have options. Even Ricochet, who I expect to be stronger and better and all those things, maybe he's gone. So they can go down the list a little bit to where I think of the guys that are in the projected rotation, only Trey and Kennard would be like below Vit in the pecking order of like who you would have those guys on but they have 3 or 4 guys ahead of him, and that seems appropriate for Vit. I mean, we're being, again, intentionally kind of broad with that, but I think that as long as you can keep him out of the number one matchup, if he's your second or third perimeter defender, like you're fine. Like he can execute. He's gotten more reps. This is a small thing, all things considered, but his block and steal rates went up last year. That's usually a good sign of activity and like getting in the right place, getting your hands in. He can do that a little bit, and he rebounded better too. Like he's a bad rebounder, I would say, but he's improved. Like the numbers tell a positive story there. So if you want to see some areas where he's gotten better already and maybe has some more growth areas by the numbers, you can find them. And the eye test says the same thing, and the situation says the same thing. So like, I'm not trying to sell you, I'm like all in on Vit's defense, but like there's enough to be convinced of something, I would say.
Yeah, the rebounding is interesting because as I rewatched some games from the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, preparing the video stuff I'm rolling out for my Patreon, there were times where he wasn't getting rebounds, but he would see, Ricochet is trying to deal with, a center, and he'd come down and be a second body on that center, which would give the team rebounding, open up the team rebounding, be a little bit more capable, right? And so he was great about coming down and kind of just putting it. Now, it's funny, like a number of times he would just end up on the floor, after that. But at least he was going down and trying to put a second body on the other team's best offensive rebounder. And that's contribution. Even if it doesn't turn into something statistical for you, that's contribution. And it's something he was doing more and more down the stretch of the season. And so, you and I talk all the time about know what you're good at, know what you're not good at, try to steer, your decisions towards your strengths. And yeah, he's not going to be able to kind of go be a guy who averages, 4 rebounds a game playing in 14 minutes on the second unit or whatever, but just being another person willing to go down and be physical, put another body on a big guy, it's helpful. And he did that a little bit more, or quite a bit more in the last 3-4 weeks of the season.
Today's just brought to you by Monarch Money. A lot of people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. If you know the full picture, actually end up leaving money on the table, and that is why Monarch Money is there for you. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface, either on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've been putting off organizing your finances for a long time, Monarch Money is for you. They do all the heavy lifting for you at Monarch. And you can also link all of your accounts together in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel like control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet yourself. For me, I linked all my accounts to Monarch, and we spotted some of the monthly costs that I could actually get rid of pretty easily. Cancel those commitments alone, saving money each and every month. You can also maximize your investments, increase your savings rates, easily review your finances with a financial advisor or with your partner if you want to, and generally have a complete and clear view of your financial health, both in the short term and the long term. Do not let the opportunity for financial freedom slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA.
He's also a good athlete. He's not like a nuclear NBA athlete, but he's a good athlete. He's not a zero athlete. Like I think people see skinny white guy and shooter. And he's a good athlete. He is. He's got some springs. He can go out there and do some high pointing of the ball and be aggressive when he wants to be and kind of dial in. One thing related to the kind of lineup and schematic and like systematic thing we were talking about earlier, I pulled the numbers on this. I'm not picking on Trey. Trey's improved defensively, but it was kind of stark and funny to me. Essentially, boiling it down, when Vit played without Trey last year, the Hawks were really good defensively by the numbers. When Vit played with Trey last year, they were really bad defensively by the numbers. And that's not all on Vit, nor is it all on Trey. But it is a reminder of the lineup stuff that they have to deal with, and the limitations that Trey has, which we all understand. But like, I think if you can put lineups on the floor where Vit is your worst perimeter defender, you're feeling great, honestly. Which you can't do with Trey. So that's the thing. It's like how much, and this is another thing we're talking about when we talk about Kennard. Can you ever play Kennard and Trey together? And if you do, what do you do? Vit isn't to that level of Kennard, but I think Quinn's going to have his hands full in a good way. He's got options of like what to do lineup wise. You have these two aces defensively, and Dyson in particular, but also McKeel, that give you so much versatility defensively. But also, it's like, all right, you want to have them out there with these other guys. So where if you, for instance, if you play Trey and Vit this year, you probably have more of a chance to function, because I'm assuming if you do that, you're going to have at least one of McKeel or Dyson on the court with them. That really helps. Also, Zach being a year older, Jalen being alive and back in with this season versus, in fact, I looked this up briefly, and I'm rambling, but some of that Trey Vit number also included guys like Roddy or guys like Niang or like some Barlow center minutes, like some stuff that's like not really about Vit and Trey. So like there's always noise, but I thought it was stark and it kind of makes sense to what we're talking about. Like if you can have them out there with a good situation, it's not a problem. He kind of proved that last year. Like he was on the court without Trey or without Roddy or whatever, it was fine.
Yeah. It's kind of funny with Trey. I think sometimes people don't understand that he's trying to walk a fine line. What you can't have is Trey out there trying to do everything on defense and getting himself in foul trouble. Yep. That kills your offense, right? And so Trey has to pick his spots. He's better jumping passing lanes. He's better on, he's got better at ripping down on a guy taking a shot. Kind of creating it'll in the scorebook it'll look like a block, even though it's just more of a rip, that kind of thing. And Trey has pretty strong hands, but you also don't want him exposing himself to hand. I mean, how many Chris Paul, like how many times has he broken his hand in his career? And so I think you want Trey to be impactful on defense to the point that he can, to know what his strengths are, jumping passing lanes, communicating. To me, number one on Trey is keeping himself out of low man, keeping himself out of trouble when they are back in transition and get matched up suboptimally, asking for someone to come take the guy that he's messed up on. This isn't what you want, and those things. So it's keeping himself out of trouble. But for Vit, I agree with you. Like if he could be the second or third guy for the 12 minutes you have on the floor of the second unit, what have you, I think that's fine. There will be a game-to-game and opponent-to-opponent context, though. There might be some opponents just play really big. You're like, yeah, I'm not Vit. I can't play tonight. I need to play bigger guys or whatever it might be. And that'll matter. But he's so helpful offensively that he gives you back a good bit of what you might be sacrificing on defense, depending upon matchup.
Yeah, and we talked around a little bit. We can kind of get into this now, and then we'll get out of here. But like, what his role is, who he's kind of competing with, are questions that I'm sure you get, like I do. I would say, and this is going to be broad to start with, but I would say he's obviously behind Dyson, Zachary Shea, and Nikhil Alexander-Walker in the pecking order.
Yep.
And of course, Trey, who's different position. But like, there's three kind of wingy guys who are clearly ahead of Vit, right? I also think that Luke Kennard will enter the season a little bit ahead of Vit based on the investment. I mean, you pay a guy $11 million. I assume he's going to play every night, basically, unless they think he can't. So that's four guys on the wing that we think are ahead of Vit just to begin the season. Now, I'm obliged to just say out loud, there will be injuries. There always are. We've seen this many times. So there's that. But also, like, okay, Vit, for me, would probably be next on the list of the wingy guys, perimeter guys. But he's also got guys he's competing with. I mean, even if indirectly. So you got Kobe Buffkin, who's much more of a point guard than Vit. But the theory of Kobe, dating back to when they drafted him, was that maybe he could play some two as well with Trey. That was kind of the theory of Kobe. Will that happen this year? We have no idea at this point. We just don't know. But that's another guy to keep in mind. Also, they have, as we're talking, they've reportedly, and we've covered this at nauseam, they've reportedly signed Caleb Houston. They haven't announced that yet. But Caleb Houston's another guy who is similar in length to Vit, similar in kind of being kind of skinny, shoot first player. There's some overlap there between Caleb Houston and Vit Krejci. Who will defend better? I think I probably lean to Vit, but we'll see. That's another guy. You got Keaton Wallace, Jacob Topman. That's kind of down the list. But his role was really interesting to me. It's kind of where I would start this, and I want to see what you think. We've talked around it, but like, let's say opening night matchup. We don't know yet who that's going to be. Is he like the 10th guy on the borderline of playing? Like, that's kind of where I'm projecting him to be honest. Like, without knowing the opponent, it might be on Quinn to see, like, okay, Quinn, how deep do you want to go? How do you handle backup point guard? Because Vit, I think we've seen they've tried being a backup point guard. They don't love that. I think if you put him out there with other guys, he can kind of help you in that realm. But as far as like being the backup point guard, I kind of doubt it. So a lot of words to say, Glenn. Like, what's this going to look like with Vit? Like playing time, rotation, role.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is going to be sort of have 1 foot in the rotation, 1 foot out, kind of be right on the bubble in some games. And it's just going to be completely matchup dependent, and to your point, health dependent. If Kennard's not a guy who always plays like 80 games a year. Like he misses time here and there, and in those games he probably plays maybe closer to 20 minutes in a game where Kennard's just not playing. Second night back to back, whatever it might be, those things. Because Kennard's not the biggest guy in the world, and can kind of get banged up here and there and stuff. So, but for me, I my guess is if the Hawks are playing from behind, Vit's offense, the juice he gives the offense is helpful when you're playing from behind. And I think that whether you're playing with a lead or playing from behind might have a lot to do with whether you put a more offensive juice on the floor to try to kind of give yourself the capability, put your best offensive lineup on the floor. And I think if you're down to 8 to 9 guys in the second half and you're down by 15 points trying to kind of get back in the game, Vit just does so much good stuff on offense that he's going to be kind of, he's not going to be probably closing the game, but like playing the first half of the fourth quarter while you're resting a couple guys to come back for the last stretch and all of that. So for me, I think it is game flow dependent, score dependent, health dependent, all those sorts of things. But like I said, when they're playing from behind, he's a helpful guy to have on the floor, and that might be something that that gets him on the floor more than he might otherwise would.
It'll probably be a theme we talk about all season long, but it's also about combinations, which we've discussed some of that already on this discussion, like who you pair guys with. And every day I get a question about backup point guard from somebody. I'm sure you do too. It's like, oh, what's the plan? We don't know the plan. What I do know and what I've heard behind the scenes, it's not like a Vit discussion, but it's like, all right, they have a bunch of options and they can pair them all together and they're hoping to get by that way. And they can still sign somebody. It's early August as we're talking now. But Vit's part of that. He's not one of the primary parts of that, but he can be your second ball handler in certain matchups. That's fine. If he's your third ball handler, you're in great shape. He can handle the ball some, good passer, processor. We talked about that. And also, look, the investment level in Vit is such where, like, if quote unquote all he is your 10th, 11th guy, you're still doing cartwheels. He's making no money at all. I mean, as a reminder, people don't maybe remember this, he signed this incredibly team-friendly 4-year deal that I honestly felt bad. I thought he deserved more, and the Hawks did a great job negotiating it with him. But he actually is technically non-guaranteed for this year. He'll be on the team. They're not going to cut him. But it's $2.3 million this year, which is basically the minimum this season. Then he has $2.7 million next year, and then a club option for $3 million the year after that. So he signed for 3 more seasons at basically the minimum. And if he was the 14th man on the team, it would be a good contract. And he's not. He's clearly better than that. So that doesn't matter for the whole thing. That's why I saved it for the end. It's not like the biggest part of this, but having a guy that makes no money that you basically trust to be in the rotation, if you need him to be in the rotation, is a really nice luxury, particularly for a team that does not like to pay the luxury tax and has not paid the luxury tax in a long time. Having that kind of piece that you can it gives Auntie flexibility and, to use his word just for fun, optionality. Vit gives you that in contract, in skill set, in vibes, because he's a great vibes guy. Everybody loves the guy. So just a guy that I really like Vit. I always have, but putting that aside, the player and the contract, all that, it's a really nice part of this roster. I think he's very valuable just to have around.
Yeah, agreed. Second side pick and roll, he can do that. Even in moments where he's running a traditional pick and roll, he snakes the pick and roll really well. That's probably the most advanced part of his pick and roll game, is getting his defender on his back and snaking it. But he's not a dynamic guy running the pick and roll, but he's crafty and kind of knows, again, as he becomes closer to a quasi veteran, if you will, knowing what he's good at and leaning into those things. That's what smart players do. And he's going to outplay the value of that contract, I think, easily this year, right? And so for me, multiple levels here. Like we talked, offensive processing, leaking out in transition, secondary, second side action, all that stuff is good, and everything. And then the other aspect from an entertainment value, he's a fun watch,
Yeah.
and which is good for TV viewership or whatever. Well, he's a fun guy to watch play. So I think that matters too.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I brought up the age at the very beginning of this is he's the guy that I don't think he's going to become a different player now at 25, but he's still at the point of his career where it wouldn't surprise me if there was another half step in some areas. He's got some physical growth even still to get a little bit stronger. He's only been an NBA player full time for 4 years. He's not a 30-year-old guy. He's got some room to grow, I think, and throw that all in that with everyone else. I'm pretty intrigued by Vit, and I think that because it's natural. We talked about this with Mo Gay a little bit. Mo is more of a flashy player in that I think that he just was young, as a year younger as far as his development cycle is concerned. He had the real clear breakout last year. Whereas Vit played more. Last year was his best season for sure. But I don't know about you. No one's talking about Vit Krejci to me. He's a guy that I never hear. I mean, not in a bad way, but it's he's not the apple of the eye of Hawks fans right now. And I get why. There's Porzingis and Nikhil and Asa Newell, all these different guys, and Vit just kind of was Vit was there last year, and he was good. I mean, Vit was a good player last year. I mean,
Yep.
you talked about outplaying his contract. I think Vit was worth $6-7 million last year, and he made $2 million. And that's a nice thing for your roster. I don't know.
Yeah, and connecting the dots, if they have Vit on a bigger contract, they probably can't get Alexander Walker and Luke Kennard and Kristaps Porzingis, and so it's a little credit there to the Hawks front office realizing they needed to create some cap space to meaningfully add to the roster, and some of those more affordable contracts gave them the space to do that. So that's helpful.
Yeah, the reality is, and this is a different podcast, the reality is when you are a team that maybe it'll change at some point, but when you're a team that has a documented record of not paying the luxury tax, you need some guys who are underpaid. And Vit is one of them. Kongwu is one of them. Obviously, Richeche being on a rookie contract is one of them. They have a few of these guys who are clearly making less than they should be making, and you kind of have to have that to build your roster when you have these limitations. So we've done a lot on Vit here. I know we both like him. I was excited to talk about him, and I think Hawks fans should be watching Vit. I mean, he's kind of an afterthought in some circles, but preseason, I'll be interested to see who he's playing with, what role he's in, position he's playing, is he taking as many threes, all that stuff. There's a lot to watch with Vit too, and a fun player. I'm excited about him.
Absolutely.
Glenn, thank you for doing this as always.
Yeah.
At the end of these discussions, I always ask you to plug yourself, which I know you don't like to do, but you should plug yourself. I try to do it for you sometimes to talk you up as much as I can. But for people that are just now fun, if we look, Vit's very prominent in the Czech Republic. He's like their guy on the national team. We might have some extra listeners today on YouTube in particular.
Yeah, I know. I should have probably done a little Google Translate and found out a way to say a couple of words. ATL 29's podcast home. Recently did a podcast with Evan over at Hawksbeat. So you can go find that one too. That was a fun conversation. And then my Patreon, you can find the link to that in both my profile on Twitter and Blue Sky.
Follow Glenn. He does fantastic work. Patreon, ATL 29, all those places, Twitter, Blue Sky, like you just said. Thanks for doing this, my friend. As for everybody else, please subscribe to the podcast. We'll hopefully get Glenn to come back on the podcast soon, and we'll see everybody next time.